You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas and are having a happy holiday continued season. And the Colts, by some miracle, are still in the playoffs.
They really didn't hurt themselves that much.
Right? If there was one game to lose, it was the game to the Falcons, which is the NFC team down the stretch. But I'll say this before we really kick off things. Vegas knows, man. Vegas knows.
Now we know why the line was so squirrely.
It was could have been a whole lot higher as the Falcons get the 29-10 victory over the Colts on Christmas Eve down there in Atlanta.
You know, you like betting things. Did you see that note about that guy that took a 14-player?
14-way parlay.
$5.
Leg parlay. $5.
And he won $400 and something thousand.
And because Christian McCaffrey scored a touchdown, which is
last
probably
game.
the most likely thing in your parlay there.
Yeah, but Jonathan Taylor had to score. He was on the list, and he scored, what was an aberration in that game, the way the game went.
That might have been one of the closer ones.
I look at those things, and $5. Yeah, I'll put $5 on. And the guy's $400,000.
That makes you want to do the parlays, and Vegas loves for people to do parlays.
That's why the odds are so crazy.
Exactly.
Is because 14 guys had to score a touchdown.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
Rabbit hole one. Okay, go ahead.
And that was your fault. That wasn't even my fault this time.
Say, we didn't even get into the show yet.
Exactly. Yeah, we haven't even talked too much about the Colts. They're in playoff position. They host the Raiders 1 o'clock on CBS 4 in Central Indiana this Sunday afternoon. 2 more games. You win them both, you're all but in the playoffs. There is now a very, very small...
It's like 99 and 9 point... Right.
Well, we've seen 99% scenarios go one way or go the other way in the
2
past.
years ago.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, that's why I'm saying. Like, it's not a shoo-in if the Colts win these 2 games, but it is the most likely, all but likely scenario.
Isn't the one reason that they wouldn't make it is if Cincy's the one team you can't tie with.
If the Colts and the Bengals, through all the records that go through, with the games remaining to be played, if they end up with the same record,
only 2 teams,
and they're the only 2 teams remaining in the playoffs, and the Colts are out by virtue of the head-to-head that they lost to Cincinnati a couple weeks ago.
It's there for it. It is. It's there.
But here's the deal: like you've got the Browns and you've got the Bills now that have better records than you. And so those 2 are feeling good about themselves, especially the Browns. And the Bills are playing as well as almost anybody except the Ravens right now.
How many people had that team written off?
Right.
Because of how they were playing and because of the schedule.
It was tough schedule, and they've risen to the occasion.
They fought through it for sure. But all that to say that it is not for certain that the Colts make the playoffs, but they're going to have to do all they can to do it. And that it could be a game that, like we've said, gets flexed that final week of the season to the Sunday night, and we'll see Colts-Texans possibly for a playoff spot, depending on how it all goes down. Or, heck, even for the AFC South title if Jacksonville continues to flounder. So we'll see.
There's another game someone pointed out. Is it Miami and Buffalo?
Yeah, and I would imagine that if it comes down to it and that has meaning, then even if it doesn't have a lot of meaning, it probably weighs more than Colts Texans.
Because of Buffalo Miami.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah. So good point. Maybe it doesn't get flexed for that specific reason. So.
But that's it reminds me of 2018.
Yep.
And they flexed Colts Titans in Nashville, and it was a winning in, and they won.
Yes, they did. Pretty strongly, if I remember correctly. It was pretty convincing. It wasn't like 29-0, but it was a convincing win.
It wasn't last drive we needed or else. No,
exactly.
They went out and took care of business.
That's what not close is in the NFL. Teams like when the last drive doesn't mean anything. It's not.
When you're up by a couple scores with 5 minutes left, that's
exactly.
That's an easy win in the NFL.
That's what I remember exactly as a not close game. But anyway, let's take a quick trip around the NFL before we head into the Colts and Raiders this week. The venerable Russell Wilson benched in Denver from getting a massive contract 2 off seasons ago, from discussions about should he come to the Colts. That was the one of the quarterbacks that was at least some speculation a couple years ago when the Colts were looking for a new quarterback. But no more Russell Wilson in Denver. And who knows what the future holds for that for the Super Bowl champion he won an MVP, didn't he? He must have won an MVP.
No,
he did. He never won MVP.
His thing with the career, he was like never top 5.
Okay, well,
or he maybe never got a vote for MVP.
Well, that's crazy.
But what's crazy is.
But I guess the more you think about it, like Brady would take votes, Manning would take votes during some of his career.
Wrong time, wrong
Mahomes
place.
Would take votes. So yeah, I get it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
But the thing with Wilson is what's really crazy, and it's fun to see another team go through this. It really is
fun. Yeah.
But they've made it clear they're moving on, and his extension hasn't even it goes into effect next year.
Mm-hmm.
So now Sean Payton's trying to not rewrite history, but sort of saying, well, this gives. He said, yes, there's always financial concerns, but we think this move gives us the best chance to win. In what universe? Is it Trevor Siemian? Is who they moved to?
Jarrett Stidham.
Same guy.
Yeah.
Same guy. I apologize.
Right?
I apologize. But it's you got to see how the dead money is. It's like monster.
It's crazy how much.
It's $85 million.
Yeah.
Which a team, you can't do it. I mean, it's
not with that attitude.
That's true. But apparently they went to him and a couple weeks ago, whatever, about this is all about that injury clause that if he's injured, then either next year or next year's already guaranteed. 2 years becomes guaranteed, and the Raiders did this with Derek Carr last year, where they sat him down, and then they got rid of him. So it's amazing. And God, this is a rabbit hole again. I apologize, folks, but this is very similar to what happened here with a certain quarterback named CW. Named 27-7. And the Colts so badly wanted to move on, they did so without knowing who the next guy was.
Right.
Denver has no idea.
No clue. And
they're not in position to do it because of what it took to get him.
They gave up a lot to get Wilson. They don't have a lot of draft capital.
So again, after all the stuff that we've had to wade through, you kind of like to just sit back there and sort of watch the circus somewhere else.
Yeah, no, they might end up signing a guy like in the vein of a Gardner Minshew, who is a backup that they feel can provide good starting minutes for them.
With the right team around him.
Exactly. Someone like him, someone like a Cooper Rush from Dallas, someone like a
Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, like if they're actually going to do something meaningful or try to do something meaningful. While they're at $85 million in the hole anyway, or whatever the dead cap number is, as they look into the future.
And I think they've got the 13th pick in the first round.
As I say, they're not in position to do anything.
They don't have a second-round pick, so they don't have much to use to try to trade up to get into position there, because it's a pretty decent quarterback class by all accounts this year. But when you're 13,
could Daniels fall to them at 13? Maybe the LSU Heisman winner. I would imagine Penix would still be there at 13 for sure. Jordan Travis will still be there, but he got hurt at Florida State, so who knows?
We'll see what desperation does on driving the market.
Yes.
It always drives people up.
100%. So I think they'll have an option at quarterback there. It just depends on if they like the option they have at quarterback there. Yeah. So that's Russell Wilson. Jacoby Brissett, the former Colts quarterback, got the start for the Washington Commanders. They are eliminated from the playoffs, but the Commanders have benched Sam Howell.
Finally.
Exactly. He hung on as long as he could, and maybe longer than some people expected, longer than I expected. It's funny. I have a friend who works in D.C. in television there, and he always tweets. He tweets a bunch, and he's actually the guy who did that interview with Carson Wentz when he moved to the Commanders, and was getting a lot of flack online from the Washington Commanders, like from the GM, from Jason Campbell, about asking him normal questions. It was the stupidest reaction from a team that I've ever seen.
The
non-controversy
controversy.
Exactly.
One of those.
It was like it was so out of left field that they reacted as strongly as they did to him asking, "You've been cut by two teams. Why do you have faith that you're going to be? This is the right spot."
How do you not ask that
exactly?
question?
Yeah, like they're obvious. Anyway, all that to say, Jacoby Brissett's now starting for them as they're 4-11 and in a race to the bottom, and trying to see who their quarterback of the future could be, if they might one day be in the sweepstakes up at the top four for a Caleb Williams, for a Drake May, or for whoever it is they do like in that draft. So we got Jacoby watch with the Commanders, and we've got injury watch all over the AFC. Certainly Colts fans should be aware of a couple quarterback injuries because has relevance for the postseason. Trevor Lawrence dealing with a shoulder injury.
Somebody said it was an AC sprain.
Yeah, I believe it's the AC joint. Yep.
Well,
Isn't that what
familiar with that?
This quarterback had?
It is what this quarterback had.
Certainly more severe.
It certainly sounds like this one was a bit more severe. Not Lawrence, the Richardson, of course. And then C.J. Stroud, still dealing with his concussion, trying to work his way back through the protocol.
Limited in practice yesterday.
I think.
He did return, which is a good sign for them.
Right.
Concussion he's dealing. He's playing against the Titans. And then Tua Tagovailoa, the quadriceps and thumb injury. They play the Ravens in a massive game there atop the AFC because the Ravens, like I said earlier, are playing as well or better than anyone else in the NFL right now. And Lamar Jackson is playing as well or better than any other player in the NFL right now.
He's now the betting choice for those of you who follow those things.
Exactly. After poor Brock Purdy laid an absolute like his 4 interceptions, like they were like all tips or batted his elbow.
But they go to the quarterback.
Go to him. Exactly. That they fault him at the end of the day. So like those things, like you can't throw. Like you've got to be able to get the right arm angle to get it past the jumping defensive tackle. And that's what the best quarterbacks do. Like they know where the defensive tackle is. They know that a defensive end is coming across the corner and they can't throw it or their arm doesn't get hit or it doesn't happen as often, for the best of the best. So anyway, all that to say, like you can say, oh, it's not really his fault. But I think the elite quarterbacks would say, well, it would kind of be my fault in some way.
And ways. you're used to Purdy has avoided a lot of this stuff
very
throughout.
Much so.
That's why it was so surprising to just. It felt like they just happened back to back to back in that first half in that game.
Now, speaking of the best of all time, a couple of Colts are among 15 modern-era finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, of which our very own Mike Chappell is one of the selectors. Those two, Reggie Wayne and Dwight Freeney. No surprise to see them on this list. We saw them last year as well, both of them making this cut. Reggie Wayne, a finalist for the 5th time. He is top 10 in NFL history in catches and yards in both the regular season and the playoffs. And I believe, as of a couple years ago at least, the stat was he was up there. It was him and Jerry Rice.
It hasn't changed.
Yeah, exactly. That stat has not changed. He has 8 1,000-yard seasons, 4 seasons with at least 100 catches. And as for Dwight Freeney, makes the cut over Robert Mathis for the 2nd time. Seems like the national perception, again, as we've talked about, is that Freeney is the better option than Mathis, even though here Mathis has plenty of love, and I think plenty of Colts fans keep them 1-1. Like
Mathis is the career sack leader.
Exactly.
Not Freeney.
Colts career sack leader.
Right.
And he's the NFL all-time strip sack leader.
Right.
So that's pretty good. You do something better than anyone else. Like another point I'm about to make, you should probably be a Hall of Fame consideration for sure, at least. More than consideration. But this is Freeney's 2nd time as a finalist, joining last year. He's 2nd in Colts history with 107.5 sacks, 18th in the all-time career sack list, 125.5 sacks for his career, forced 47 fumbles, which is 3rd all-time. So those two, along with a couple first-timers on this list. The first-timers are cornerback Eric Allen, guard Jari Evans, tight end Antonio Gates, safety Ronnie Harrison, defensive end Julius Peppers, running back Fred Taylor. And then after that, a couple other players who have been in this finalist list before include defensive end Jared Allen, offensive tackle Willie Anderson, wide receiver kick returner Devin Hester, wide receiver Torrey Holt, wide receiver Andre Johnson, Chap's boy, and linebacker Patrick Willis, and safety Darren Woodson. So from those 15, Chap, you will all come together on Super Bowl week or weekend, and you will discuss, you will fight, there will be bare-knuckle brawls, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and you will cut it down from 15 to 10 at first, and then there will be a vote from 10 to get the top 5. For the Colts' perspective, I know we've discussed this because this is the 5th year Reggie Wayne has been on the list. He can't go out and give you another 1,000-yard season.
I've asked him and he won't do it.
Exactly, or another Pro Bowl year. But he continues to stay on this list. Folks in this market and Reggie himself, of course, certainly want to see him with that gold jacket on. What kind of chances do you think he has looking at the list of players that is there before us, the 15 modern era finalists?
I think both he and Dwight have a decent chance. One thing is we're not meeting Super Bowl weekend. It's like middle of January.
Oh, excuse me for that. I'm sorry.
It's changed. And
it used to be that, didn't
yes,
it? Yes,
we used to get together the day before. But this, we're getting it together like 2 weeks before.
Right.
And then it'll be announced Super Bowl weekend on that NFL
and you'll
honors.
be sworn to secrecy for 2 weeks.
I'll know, but I'll either be really happy inside or I'll be really PO'd inside.
We'll know based on how many bruises Chap has on his face and how many bruises Peter King has on his face.
It's just what people have to understand is it's sort of like there's no wrong answers with this group. Now, I don't think this is a real strong group of 15. Mm-hmm. I just don't. But the issue is we've got 3 receivers again, with Reggie, Torrey Holt, and Andre Johnson, and I could argue strongly for any of them. I kind of think that Reggie and Andre Johnson are just a notch above Torrey Holt, and then I certainly favor Reggie because I saw him play. Now we saw Andre Johnson play a load too because of divisions, but it's just funny. We asked Reggie about, does it make it easier because you saw how he and Edgerrin are really, really close, and Edgerrin always used to say that the waiting drove him crazy, but once he got in, the waiting was worth it. And Reggie said, "Don't believe that. It hurts to wait. It's hard to wait when you believe in your soul that you belong." And I asked him today when we talked to him, I said, "What with these receivers?" I said, "What sets you apart? What do you feel separates you from these other 2 guys?" And he said, "Playoffs." He said, "You're supposed, it's to get there, and then not only get there, but then perform at a high level." And again, he's top 10. When you and Jerry Rice are in the only 2 guys to do something that covers 14, 16 years, that's something. It's when you do something that only very few people have done. But he's got like 93 catches in postseason, and I don't know what it is, 1,200 yards. And like he said, that's another season. Mm-hmm. That's because it's like 21 games. So he's done another season of excellence. So we'll see. And with Dwight, I tell you, people around here need to understand that he's viewed nationally as really, really elite. Mm-hmm. Last year it was DeMarcus Ware got in front of him. This year, Julius Peppers, I don't know how he's viewed nationally, but I really Freeney is really looked at as one of the guys. I think during the telecast on NFL Network last night, Joe Thomas had told someone that of all the people he faced, Freeney gave him the most trouble. Mm-hmm. And I think Jason Peters, is that the long-time tech? He said also, he told The Athletic, Zach Kiefer, the Athletic, of all the guys I faced, Freeney. Mm-hmm. Well, when 2 of the all-time great tackles say, this guy gave me fits. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. It's interesting. And again, the problem is there's no wrong answers, although we look at it more skewed than that. But one thing Reggie said again is, if I get in, there'll be a party. And I may not be here for a couple of days as a coach. He said, I'm just warning you guys.
Tell Shane that he's going to have to look elsewhere if he needs help in the receiver room.
And the team will put up with that. So, looking forward to it. And, Reggie, we always enjoy whenever we get Reggie twice a month because he's just got stuff to say. Mm-hmm. And we talk more, we won't get into it now, about the receivers and how losing Pittman last week on Saturday impacted things. But he's just such a treasure to this franchise and to the city. I mean, this city really embraces – it may embrace Reggie. Mm-hmm. I don't know who – Edgerrin? I think the fan base maybe gravitates more to those guys because they were more, reachable, more – I don't know. I mean, Peyton is Peyton.
Right.
But the impact that Reggie and some of these guys made is immense, and here's Reggie back as a coach. So, it'd be good to finally get him in.
And I think what sets Reggie apart, Matt, is he also was here for longer than just the Manning era. He was also here for the Luck era. So he was here for several different really eras of Indianapolis Colts football, so he's just around longer than a guy like a Marvin Harrison, for example, or a Dallas Clark was as a pass catcher to really endear himself to a longer span of Colts fans growing up or coming into their own as fans. So Reggie's certainly a special place among people's hearts here.
Yeah, for Colts fans, he bridged those two eras from Manning to Luck, and also remained productive for pretty much his entire career. He had, what was it, that elbow injury that
elbow
last
one
year.
year and a knee his last 2 years.
And it kind of slowed him down, but he was still able to be part of the offense, even though that was the case. And it's too bad that those things kind of slowed him down at the end. And I'm just glad there was that brief flirtation with New England. And I know Reggie probably could have played another year or two, but I'm glad that he remained a Colt throughout his career.
Yeah, that's that's what Reggie. And keep in mind that what he meant to the franchise. It showed when it came time with Luck's rookie season, is they could either re-sign Reggie or Pierre Garçon, who was young. He was like 26 at the time.
Yeah, right. Great speed,
and went on to have a pretty good career. Was it Washington he went to? I think it was. But they just knew the value that Reggie would have on a rookie quarterback, and he did. So, we'll see. People can follow along, but within, the next 3 weeks, we'll have a discussion, and I'll know and you won't.
Yep, exactly. Of the players on this list, the most likely first-time honorees would be Antonio Gates and Julius Peppers. After that, I don't think any of the names from first-timers jump out as we need to put this guy in. I mean, Jari Evans was a really good player, was as a guard for a couple different teams. He was on the NFL's All-Decade team in the 2010s, I believe it was, and I think like every player on All-Decade teams has made the Hall of Fame eventually, literally every one. So
There's very few, but there are a few. But right,
yes.
That's one of the arguments is why isn't my guy in?
Right.
Because he's an All-Decade guy.
Right, but those also, for a guard who is a 6-time Pro Bowler is not a first-time honoree. Maybe he gets in eventually, but probably not this year, like I was saying. So if it both Gates and Peppers get in, then there's room for 3. And there's other. Then becomes if you want to do which wide receiver, do you want to do which
other pass rusher maybe?
Which other pass rusher between Jared Allen and Dwight Freeney? So which safety? If Ronnie Harrison could be
Patrick
in the first
Willis
time,
had a great career,
really good career,
but it was short.
It was. More in the Terrell Davis vein there. So lots of discussions to be had over the coming weeks, and I'm sure Chap will get his best presentation ready. It's not just a simple Peyton Manning and sit down. There'll be a lot more discussion than that. I've said before, I'll say it again, I think doing something better than anyone else in NFL history deserves serious consideration. That's why I like Devin Hester, but I don't know if he'll make it either based on other players here. I would love to see Fred Taylor. He's not going to be a first-timer, but I just loved watching him run. He was a really good back. He was a fun back. Maybe not as much for Colts fans all the time to watch here, but boy, I loved watching him run because I thought he was creative, he was fast, he was powerful. He was everything you would want in a running back and did stuff really well.
But he played in Jacksonville.
Exactly. That's the thing. He played a legitimate thing. Played
so
in Jacksonville.
Got to see a lot of Fred Taylor.
Yes.
For better or for worse.
And again, I think Fred's a guy who's the Hall of the very good.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be, a slap in the face. Again, I just don't. I do think that
absolutely, I understand.
2 guys get in, Peppers and Gates. I just do. And what people understand is that you got 3 spots. I would plead with my other 49 selectors that we've got to get a receiver in.
Yeah.
Or we're doing this again next year.
And you might add somebody else next
year. Then you're going to add more receivers
Before
to the
long,
queue.
you're going to have, it's not a receiver, but a Jason Witten. Larry Fitzgerald before too long. And there's guys that can't get in. Steve Smith. He's got a great resume. Anquan Bolden can't get in. So this reminds me back in when Marvin was first eligible in 2014, I think it was. We had Marvin, Tim Brown, and Andre Reed. Well, we had to break that log jam. So somehow we need to break this log jam to get these guys started.
Dwight Freeney, one of Syracuse's finest, could find
took you long enough to
his
get to
way
that.
through another one. Marvin Harrison, another a Pro Football Hall of Famer. We will see. As for current Colts news, safety Julian Blackmon has gone to injured reserve. He is done for the regular season, which is a significant blow to the defense. He has career highs this year in a contract year. Props to Julian for doing this in a contract year. 88.
But at least it's a shoulder.
It is. It is a shoulder. 88 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, 8 passes defended. So that's a pretty good season. And I know the Colts have high expectations and hopes for Nick Cross, who is now filling in for him in the meantime. So if Blackmon is if the Colts decide not to sign Blackmon here, I would not be surprised in the offseason if his career with the Colts is done, just because they want to go to Cross and they want to save money for other things like bolstering the wide receiver room for reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into in a few minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if we've unfortunately seen the last of Julian Blackmon, but Chap, he certainly saved his best for last, had a pretty productive season this year, was a playmaker in the secondary there, and was unfortunately during his time here, was kind of ravaged, I think, really by injuries, whether it was he's one of the Achilles brothers who tore his Achilles, and now the shoulder to knock him out here in his 4th year. He even came here after an ACL tear in college. So he just dealt with injury to injury. When he was on the field, he was a pretty good player, a steady player, and this year showed a little bit more of the playmaking ability in the back end of that defense.
Yeah, leader in interceptions, leader in passes defense, 3rd in tackles, which I'm not always sure how good it is to have a safety as one of your top 3 tacklers. But yeah, whether you re-sign him, injury doesn't help, and neither does the like you mentioned, the roster concerns elsewhere. They're going to have, I think I saw 3rd most cap space, which they're always top 5.
They're always up there.
There's always top 5.
They're super disciplined when it comes to the cap every year.
Holy smokes!
Disciplined is one word for it.
Yeah,
correct. But again, you've got issues. You've got, again, Michael Pittman's going to get whenever he doesn't play, all it does is increase his value.
Yep.
It just does.
That's exactly what it did last week.
I mean, I don't know what the percentage was, 10% after the last game. You thought, yeah, okay. But then you got other issues. I just don't know that they're going to pony up that much for a safety, like you said, with injury issues. And they are issues. For him, it's better that it's a shoulder and not a ACL or a patella or whatever, an Achilles. But and I think, to me right now, there's this significant, might be a strong word, drop between he and Nick Cross. Because I think Julian was playing pretty well. He was really, and I think Rodney Thomas and Nick Cross have been sort of up and down. So they'll feel it, and this is when you don't want to be losing players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look back to just kind of examples of what the Colts would consider signing and not. If indeed Gus Bradley is going to be the defensive coordinator here in the future, which is up in the air, who knows? That's a year-to-year thing for probably 75% of offensive and defensive coordinators in the league. There's very few that are probably very certain that they will be back next year. But from the Gus Bradley perspective, you look back at what he did in Seattle a long time ago, and with the Legion of Boom and what they did, they would re-sign Cam Chancellor, but they let Earl Thomas go. So those were 2 great safeties they had. They valued one over the other. And he clearly valued cornerbacks because the investment they made there. But you try to look at hints from coaches past, and certainly not all him. It goes to Chris Ballard as well, for sure. But with Julian Blackmon, he at least showed this year the value that he can give to an NFL team. Now it's going to be up to Bradley, if he's here, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, if that value is something that they want to invest in the future.
Well, and then you think about Nick Cross, too. They spent a 3rd round. They traded up to get him in the 3rd round a couple years ago. He started last year, but then just kind of disappeared because they didn't think that he had a full grasp of everything.
There's a reason you disappear.
Right. And this year, they've kind of been working him in, and now he's kind of a big part of this defense. Now he'll have the chance to kind of show the next couple games if, maybe that's their future at safety. We'll see.
The Colts got, as Matt puts it here in our rundown, eviscerated by the Falcons. That's a good word for it.
It's a good word.
It's a very good word for it. 29-10 last week in Atlanta. Outgained on offense 406 to 262. Outside of the first drive of the game, the Colts could not run the ball. They could not tackle. It was an awful performance for the second time in 3 weeks. 2 eggs in 3 weeks from this Colts team, as a win would have put them in first place in the AFC South and controlling their destiny for a home playoff game.
That's where I was really wrong when I said it didn't hurt that much. Yeah, it did in terms of what that could have done.
What they're playing for. It's not just playing to get into the playoffs.
Correct.
It is playing for a home game in the playoffs.
They would have been fourth in the current playoff standings, I believe.
They still would have had to win these last 2 games.
Yeah, they still would have, but it positioned them. It eliminates your margin of error a little bit.
That would
help with that.
Put them in line to face the Browns again, perhaps in the playoffs if it was a 4 or 5 matchup.
Because right now they're headed to Miami.
Yeah,
which
who would you rather play out there, the Browns or the Dolphins?
Browns
I think Brown,
at home
with Joe Flacco coming in, the wily veteran.
The bloom's got to fall off sometime, right?
You would think so, exactly. And with
night.
Tyreek Hill, I just think there's no one that can catch him. I would be scared to death.
I mean, all those guys. It just
of going down and facing Miami in Miami.
A lot of writers are sort of pleading for Miami just because Miami.
Yeah, exactly. We all want to go to Miami.
Yeah,
welcome
this time
to Miami.
Of year, sounds pretty nice, doesn't it?
Bienvenido a Miami. We will see about that, where exactly the Colts end up, if indeed they end up anywhere for that point. But it was not a fun game to watch. And Chap, I think you alluded to it, and I kind of hinted that this discussion would come about the value of Michael Pittman Jr. And the fact that he was not in that game was very evident that no wide receiver could fill his place on this roster. He made his value undeniably known to this offense by not playing. And every game that he does not play, his value increases, it seems like, for this Colts team. We've speculated, of course, here on this podcast and elsewhere, like if you wanted to sign one player longer before Jonathan Taylor was signed, who would you want? Taylor, Pittman, and all that. Like, and you could make arguments for Taylor, you can make arguments for Pittman. Well, Taylor was playing in this game, and he did nothing did nothing at all. Pittman was
13-yard run.
There you go. Well, okay, he did one thing. Good. He got a 13-yard run. He got a touchdown to help one friend somewhere to a $400,000 payday. Incredible. But Michael Pittman Jr. not being in this game meant the offense had absolutely no consistent leg to stand on. And all hope from the Colts has to be that he is back fully healthy, and this concussion is no longer lingering this weekend based on what we saw last week.
Yeah, and again, the problem, other than him not playing, was they didn't know until, again, when they landed in Atlanta. And he had symptoms, whatever it was, headaches, sensitive to light, whatever. So all of a sudden, your Saturday night is based on redoing a big part of the game plan. We talked to Reggie today, and he said, with Pitt, you just know. You know what you're going to get. And, yes, sometimes we want more than that, but on 3rd and 7 that he's where you're going to try to go. And he said normally he gets the plays for us. Well, he's like going into last week, he was 3rd in the league in targets and catches. Sure you want more per yards per catch, but that's sort of a function of the offense. Mm-hmm. And without him, Reggie said he looked at other guys and he said we got to step up. And I talked to Alec Pierce and he said, yeah, we didn't pick up the game as we should have, and they didn't top to bottom.
Yep. It was a rough watch, Matt, to say the least, and I think that Pittman has more than proven the case why Chris Ballard should offer him a contract extension, because you know exactly what you're going to get with Pitt. You can argue that, hey, let's go out and see what we can do about T. Higgins or whoever else, or sign drafts like in the first round with your 19th pick or whatever it ends up being, the 25th pick if you win a couple games in the playoffs. Like, I think that having Pittman here is valuable, 1, for his production, 2, for his consistency. You know what you get.
He's missed 2 games in 3 years.
Yeah, and also I really think his physicality too. Like the attitude that he brings. He's the guy that can be a force, like a real force. And you don't often hear that with a wide receiver. Like I think Anquan Bolden is a name that you brought it up earlier.
Yeah,
was like that. Like you could feel his presence, and he had some incredibly productive years with the Cardinals alongside Larry Fitzgerald. And it's like Larry Fitzgerald did not completely overshadow him, which speaks to Anquan Bolden. But like to be a physical, strong bully of a wide receiver also matches the physical bully type run game that you want if you're the Colts.
He's the kind of player that you want to build the roster around.
Exactly. Like he fits here. He just seems to fit.
So the numbers, Nelson type at the position.
The number's going to be big, whatever he gets, but with his absence, you can see why he deserves it. Yeah.
Yeah, and his consistency has been there, and I mean, he could have had better numbers over the last couple years for sure if the Colts could have figured out their quarterback situation, but Pitt's been great for him. He's not only does he make the tough catches, he's a good perimeter blocker as well, and that brings a lot of value to the offense.
Well, because again, we say, well, ideally you want more. You want, we've talked. You want Jamar Chase. You want Justin Jefferson. Well, but everybody doesn't have those guys.
You don't have Tyreek Hill all the time. He's not always very obvious. Yes.
And this is kind of Reggie Wayne-ish, where right now teams know that Pitt is the guy. And he's still getting these targets. He's still getting the catches. So we'll get into the injury update later. But again, the more he doesn't play, which again is not often, it just paralyzed. It almost had the effect of not having a left tackle, because it just paralyzed. And then Alec Pierce, what do you have? 3 catches for 30 yards, had such a monster drop. Was it an early third?
It was early, yeah.
I mean, and who knows? It still may have been ugly, but some of the mistakes they made, the missed tackles and some drops, were early in the game. And who knows if this offense can get something going, and they never did. Was it 262 yards is what you said?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Look at the fourth quarter. I bet they had 100 yards in the fourth quarter of just kind of mop up.
Yep. Up until that, and then they had probably like 70 yards on their first drive of the game.
It was 75 yards on their first drive.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for the meat of the game, they probably had like 75 other yards.
Yeah, and that was one of those drives we've seen from them before, where they run the ball well, they find some plays with their wide receivers and their tight ends, and they get the ball all the way down there, and then you thought, well, maybe they'll be okay here, and then just in a few plays, Atlanta marches right down the field, ties things back up, and then that offense just goes into a coma the rest of the game.
Did Shane Steichen? I've been kind of out of the loop with Christmas a little bit. I've been on the road, then back home with multiple families. Did he say anything about the run game and why it was so ineffective?
No, we just never got it going.
I was going to say, that he's going to be very vague, I figured.
Because if you look at the inconsistencies of the team recently, it's been, is it chicken or egg with the run game? They got it fixed against Pittsburgh, was 170 yards, but against Cincy and against the Falcons, they got nothing done. So, and this goes back to when they were having trouble earlier, where there's no shock plays in the run game. Again, Taylor had, what did he finish with? Was it 18 carries and for 43 yards?
Something along those lines.
And he had 13 yards on one carry.
Yeah.
So it's when they can't run, certainly early in a series, it's all of a sudden it's 2nd and 8, and then it's 3rd and 6, and then because it took them on the touchdown, was it 3rd down? It wasn't 4th down, it was 3rd down.
Yeah, 3rd down.
From the goal, from 1st and goal. So it's so much of what these guys do the last 2 games is going to be tied to those 2020 draft picks.
Yep,
Pittman and Taylor. And I never thought I'd say it, but Pittman is more important because they've shown that they can get by with Taylor not doing Taylor stuff, but they cannot do it without Pitt.
Yep. And you look at the other side of the ball, and the Falcons were able to score 29 against them, which is a whole lot more than the Falcons typically score this year. And it was kind of the same vein as Gus Bradley said this, kind of the same vein as the Bengals. It was the running backs that gave him trouble, whether it was Joe Mixon in that Bengals game or it was Bijan Robinson, who looks like a heck of a young player for the Falcons, whether it's in the running game or out of the backfield. Like those guys are doing some damage to the Colts right now. So they really need to figure out how to bottle things up there before the end of this season. And I don't know if Josh Jacobs is ready to come back. We'll get into injury reports in a little bit, but I know he didn't play last week for the Raiders, who they're going to play this weekend. But can't allow those performances from running backs, Chap.
Well, because you're facing, this will be the 5th week in a row they faced a backup quarterback.
Right.
I mean, take advantage of that for crap. Jake Browning, he came crashing back to earth. I mean, and that's you can't let Taylor Heineke beat you with so much on the line.
I made the point on Twitter. Taylor Heineke is the new Brock Osweiler. Doesn't matter what team he plays for.
2 years in a row.
He beats the Colts. Yep. Because that's what Brock did with Denver, and then with Houston. Those are the two that he beat them with. And
when things stacked in your favor, they've benefited from injuries and all that have really hurt them. They've benefited so much from the external things.
Yep.
With teams having injuries and quarterback issues, and again, like you're going to have a quarterback this week who went into Kansas City and won without completing a pass in the last 3 quarters.
How about that?
If you don't take advantage of that, then shame on you.
Mm-hmm. And an undrafted rookie who Purdue fans will know very, very well, toot boiler up, Aiden O'Connell leads the L.A., Oakland, Vegas Raiders into Lucas Oil Stadium. The Raiders are 7-8 this year. They are 11th in the AFC, but still alive.
To win the division.
Exactly, because the Chiefs can't win the division because they lose to the Raiders.
They look lost.
They look terrible. Yes, they can't catch. Mahomes is throwing hissy fits every week.
Did you see Travis Kelce's helmet throw?
Oh, yes.
It was epic.
Yeah, that was a slam.
The funnest part was when the equipment guy tried to give it back to him, and Andy Reid took it away from him.
Yeah, Reid yelled at the equipment guy. He's not getting that back. That team has problems right now.
They look broken,
yes.
And I don't know if Mahomes is great enough to do anything about it.
Here's the deal. I saw this in Philadelphia, growing up in Philly with Andy Reid. I saw a team break under him. That's what happened. The team was awful at the end of his reign, and they needed to move on. And then he went to Kansas City and started over again, and things have been great for a long time.
You can be somewhere too long.
You can. You absolutely can. Not every franchise is Pittsburgh, and you can have one coach for 20 years, or New England.
Belichick's been there forever.
Exactly. Pete Carroll's been in Seattle for a long time right now too. But good coaches eventually don't last anymore. They're done.
You kind of wonder if this year, and again, not following them that closely, with Kansas City, is they got so full of themselves, our system is good enough and players are secondary, with the way they didn't address receiver. And it's, no, we can get by with these guys, and they can't. Mm-hmm. These guys, and Kelce hasn't been the same player,
right?
Since he's been going with.
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far, but
there's something missing.
Yep.
And Mahomes did things against the Raiders that were incredibly elite as far as trying to make plays, and he's not getting much help.
Nope. It's been an awful watch if you're a Chiefs fan, but everyone else can laugh a little bit based on all the success they've had in recent years, saying, come on back down to earth, you guys, and we'll see what happens over the last couple weeks of the season. Who knows? If things click next week, then they're a Super Bowl contender right away.
It's amazing how it goes.
Yeah, but right now, just no signs of that at the moment.
But again, to their credit, the Raiders took advantage of that.
Exactly. They did.
They have 206 yards offense?
Oh, yeah, it was something along those lines.
But it was so similar to when the Colts beat Carolina. Remember, they had 198 yards total offense, yet that was Kenny Moore's game. You get 2 defensive touchdowns, and that's exactly what the Raiders did. They get 2 defensive touchdowns in, was it back-to-back offensive plays?
It was, yes, in 17 seconds or 8. It was maybe even fewer than that.
And then crazy. They turned that defense, or not just the defense, but that maniac on the end loose. Mm-hmm. And Max Crosby is going to be a a load for somebody.
It's amazing, those pass rushers that you find in the later rounds, man, that completely bloom with how much work goes into finding that position specifically in the draft and finding guys that can make it. And that a guy like Max Crosby falls down a little bit, the Raiders scoop him up, and he turns into the dude he is
Robert
right now.
Mathis type.
Yep, exactly.
Guy's got just a motor. You watch that guy just every play.
Antonio Pierce is the interim coach there, longtime player in the NFL. He played with the Giants. Is that correct? Or did he play with the Giants for a good long time? And that's right, because I saw him. Oh, I can't remember. I'm going to stop right there because I don't remember where I was going.
But Reggie Wayne told us again, then we asked him if he knew Antonio Pierce. He said, "Well, I know him from the fraternity of players."
Right.
But he said you can tell if you watch the first couple of games under McDaniels and you watch now, you can see that this guy, that the players have bought in. Mm-hmm. You that's something you can't disguise. He says it's very clear that these players,
right,
that he has gained their respect, and they're, if he wins out, whether they make the playoffs or not, there's a very good chance he sticks.
It's quite possible. They've won 2 in a row. That surprising win over the Chiefs and the blowout over the Chargers, 63-21, where Aiden O'Connell threw touchdown after touchdown. You have some weapons. They have some real weapons. We'll talk about them in a minute if O'Connell can complete a pass to one or two of them like he didn't do for the most part last week, even though it was a win. Last two meetings against the Raiders in 2022, the Colts beat them 25-20 in Jeff Saturday's only victory.
I thought you were going to say his first game as a coach, but it was his only victory.
His only victory and his first game as a coach.
His brief undefeated tenure as
That's
a
right,
NFL
1-0, and then things weren't 1-0 anymore. And then 2021, so this is 3 years in a row they've played the Raiders. The game saw the Colts blow a chance to make a playoff after Shaquille Leonard could not bring down Derek Carr in the backfield, and Kenny Moore could not make a tackle on Hunter Renfrow. Mm-hmm. And was that the game where Carson Wentz couldn't find T.Y. Hilton in the flat either? So right there, there were a lot of problems, a lot of different problems, and the Colts blew their opportunity there to clinch a playoff, which could have sent this franchise in a very, very, very different direction.
Unbelievable what might have been.
Offensive rankings for this year. The Raiders are 25th in the NFL and scoring at 19 points per game. The Colts, after scoring 10 last week, still hanging on to the top 10 there. 9th in the NFL, scoring 23.6 points per game. Passing, the Raiders are down to 23rd in the NFL, about 190 yards per game. Colts are 19th, a little bit better, 220 yards per game. Rushing yards, the Raiders all the way down at 31st in the NFL, 88.6 yards per game. Josh Jacobs has not been a very productive player for them this year. Colts in 13th in rushing yards per game, 113.2 yards per game, 4.1 yards per rush.
Those are deceiving numbers because it's not been that good.
Raiders have 36 big plays this year. Indy has 51, so a significant amount more, 15 more, which is almost, I guess, 45% more than the Raiders number. So the Raiders mostly passing, of course, 30 passing big plays, 6 rushing big plays. Colts 40 passing big plays, 11 rushing big plays. So there's where we are there. Defensive points allowed. The Raiders are 8th in the NFL. So they have pretty good defense there at 19.6 points per game. That's certainly Antonio Pierce's MO as their interim head coach. Colts down in 28th in points per game, 24.8 as that fell a little bit after giving up 29 last week. Defensive yards allowed, Raiders are 16th in the league, 332 yards per game. Colts 22nd at 351 yards per game. Passing defense, the Raiders are 11th. Rushing defense, they're 22nd. Colts 14th in pass defense and 28th, still way down there in rush defense, has not completely turned around since the return of Grover Stewart, which we heralded a couple weeks ago. And 2 of the last 3 weeks, as we said, running backs have certainly had their way with the Colts at the times. It hasn't always been running right up the middle at Grover. I'm not putting this all on him by any stretch.
Last week was almost more just the missed tackles by everybody.
A lot of perimeter stuff. They'd get around the corner, and then they wouldn't make the tackle that would have stopped a guy for a couple yards.
Raiders are -3 in the turnover margin, 21 takeaways to 24 turnovers. Colts are +3 with 24 takeaways and 21 turnovers. What a tangled web, mirror-like we weave. And the Colts' streak of 19 straight games with a takeaway came to an end. Goodbye last week. It goes back to 0 days without a takeaway now at the top of the Colts defensive meeting room. So an unfortunate swing for them, and they could have used one from time to time to try to inject some life into the team in general, which showed very little of it.
Had a
pick
potential pick six right there.
He did. Right off, boop.
That was early too, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
like I say, so many things early went bad.
Could have been far different. On offense, Aiden O'Connell, a quarterback, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions for the Purdue Boilermaker, who once was the 8th string quarterback on the Purdue roster as a walk-on.
Walk-on,
and
absolutely.
then he's just fought his way to starter for 2 years for them, undrafted rookie in the NFL. And now with Jimmy Garoppolo not the answer there, they turned to Aiden O'Connell and gave him the reins for the back half of this season. Sacked 20 times this year. He's 4-4 as a starter for the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, 805 yards on the ground, only 3.5 yards per carry. He has 6 touchdowns this year, 37 catches for 296 yards in the touchdown. Was he a running back that did not get a contract? He just had the franchise tag this year. And the poster child, for why NFL teams do not give big contracts to running backs is Josh Jacobs right here.
And you could almost argue that's why the Colts shouldn't have given JT his.
Exactly, because he hasn't done anything worthy of the new contract yet. Nothing significant worthy of it yet. And Josh Jacobs, same thing, has not done anything worthy of a new contract, which he did not get. So
I think he pull a Saquon Barkley? Didn't he take just a...
Did he take a smidge more?
Just a 1-year deal that was just slightly above. I think that's what he did.
Maybe he did. And they took criticism for it.
Yep.
So
Zamir White, their backup running back, has 268 yards. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry.
Got most of that last week, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And 1 touchdown because Josh Jacobs. I think the last 2 weeks I don't think Jacobs has played either of the last 2 weeks, so he's had a chunk more lately. Devontae Adams, leading wide receiver, 972 yards, 5 touchdowns. Maybe he's not quite as dangerous as he was 2 years ago, but he's still one of the best route runners in the NFL. So he's going to put, and we've seen this year, we've seen Jalen Jones, as good of a rookie season as a 7th-round cornerback has had. I'm not taking that away from him. But he has struggled against DeAndre Hopkins. He struggled against... who else was there? Mike Evans wasn't as bad, but there was someone else
One
I
of the
thought that he
Bengals
didn't
guys.
do. Yeah, was it Chase?
Was it Jamar Chase maybe? Which again,
But he had 2 games that I thought he was really just kind of under the microscope there against an all-pro caliber receiver, and he's going to face another one this weekend in Adams.
And I was surprised, and we really had so much else going on in the holidays we didn't ask, with Darrell Baker being a healthy scratch at Atlanta.
Right.
Which tells me they still don't know the answers at corner. Mm-hmm. So, and again, if you're not careful with a guy of Devontae Adams' caliber, they'll put 100 yards on you real quick.
And they have a pretty decent number 2 there in Vegas as well. Jacoby Myers has 62 catches for 690 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he's even scored more touchdowns.
That's what caught my eye was the touchdowns.
Than Adams has this year. He's been more of a threat there. Michael Mayer, the the tight end for Notre Dame, who's now in Vegas, 27 catches, 304 yards, and 2 touchdowns. On defense, their leading tackler, Robert Spillane, 130 tackles. Divine Diablo with 93. Max Crosby has 82 tackles and also 13.5 sacks, 20 tackles for loss. A monster in the backfield.
Dude.
And as Matt says, if you want to watch a guy just work,
That's
every
your guy.
play. Every play, he is going, and it's full speed. Malcolm Kuntz with 7 sacks and 7 tackles for loss as well, and linebacker Robert Spillane, 3.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss himself. Colts are currently 7th in the AFC playoff standings with 2 games left. Vegas and Houston, 2 other teams that are also in the hunt for the playoffs. Vegas could win the AFC South, as could the Houston Texans win the AFC South. The Raiders, could win the West. If they win the next 2. But yeah, it's still up for grabs for all these teams. So it's not like the Raiders are out of it and they're not playing for anything anymore. Like they're a team that is still in it. They're a team that, as Chap said, has found a little bit to play for under this new head coach. So it's definitely a dangerous game. You certainly can't just look forward to the last game. Not that I think they would after getting blown out the way they did last week, but it's not all on last week. It is on this week too, 100%. The Colts need to win this game if they want to feel good about themselves in the last week of the season.
You lose this one, and then you're not out certainly by any stretch. I think the odds drop to 25% or whatever it is.
You need a ton of help then.
Then you need help, and that's that's not where you want to be. You don't want to be, well, if we do this, then we also need 4 things. So it's there for them, as it was in 2021. We've all written about it and talked about it. Is not only when they lost to the Raiders 2 years ago, all they had to do is beat Jacksonville, which was 2-14, and lost. I'd forgotten all this. They had lost 7 in a row, and they got dusted at New England, 50-10. And you go in there, and then the old Jacksonville and your curse,
Dave.
And your curse, it's there for them. And I thought some of the most interesting comments out of the locker room this past week after Atlanta is it sounded like these guys thought they could walk into Atlanta and win.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I read a lot of those comments
the
too.
sense of urgency, and we have to understand what's on the line. I'm thinking, what makes you guys think you're at the point that you're going to walk over somebody? Again, I think what they've done at 8-7 is truly amazing. It really is, because of all they've been through. You lose your quarterback and all this, and JT and all this. Mm-hmm. But because if you look at 8-7 and say, and look at what the numbers are behind it, you'd say that this team is not a playoff team.
Yeah,
it's not. But here they are. So nothing like one thing that they say is nothing's promised for you in the future. So seize the moment, and don't think that because you've got this, that, and the other that you're going to be back here next year, because you might not be. So goodness gracious, win against a Raiders team that is nothing great. Atlanta was probably a better team than the Raiders. Mm-hmm. Top to bottom, with a backup quarterback. But these next two games, as we've talked, it can do so much towards furthering what they're trying to get done here and what it can do for the foundation, and it's right there for them.
Both the Colts and the Raiders held walkthroughs on Wednesday, the first day of, quote, practice this week. For the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. was listed as limited, and Zach Moss was as well with his forearm injury. Braden Smith, full practice, a big step, in the right direction to getting the Colts right tackle back in the lineup. To see him back on the practice field, even though it was just, like I said, a walkthrough. So follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone for injury updates throughout the week. At mchappell51, Mike Chappell. Matt is at Statomatty. I'm at DaveG_sports. You can read all Mike Chappell's work online at fox59.com and at cbs4indy.com as well. But an encouraging first practice update out there. And then today, did you take a gander at what's going on out there?
Yeah, our Brett Bensley, he's out there as much as anybody is. Michael Pittman's out there again without the red jersey, which is normally that means you've reached you're full go, and then all you're waiting for is the independent neurologist. We went through this last week.
We did.
So with him, you just have to say, that sounds good. Let's see.
Yeah.
But Braden Smith's out there. Zach Moss is out there.
All right.
And this is a better run game with both he and Taylor. It just 100%. Is. And Braden Smith, he's missed. Is it 4 games? 5 games?
I think it's 4 games, at least 4 games.
And you're going to come back, and if he's full, he's going to play.
You would think
so.
You
got 2 games to go. You're going to play.
Yep.
And welcome back. And here's Max Crosby. I mean, that's tough.
Here's your gift.
Here you go.
But and again, this is people are going to say they're going to start jumping on Blake Freeland, who's not played all that well the last few weeks. He's had trouble with pass protection and probably run blocking.
Mm-hmm.
But doggone, they threw him out there. This is what they did last year with players, and they kind of paid the price. But I think he's shown that he's got every reason to believe he can be the swing tackle, really. But boy, Braden Smith is the guy you want. And for people who are saying that Blake Freeland shows why you don't need Braden Smith, you can cut him next year, stop it.
I don't know football.
Stop it.
Yes.
It's Braden Smith is he overpaid? I don't know. In the NFL, I don't know if anybody's overpaid because you get what you can get.
$15 million doesn't pay for what it did 10 years ago.
Right.
Like you see that and you think it's a big number, but look around at other players who are getting that amount.
And don't tell me about how it compares to other people's salaries. We're talking football. We're talking NFL, and you pay for quality players. He's been a quality player for a long time, and to get him back, if he can be, if he can be, 85% of what he was, having not played for so long. I don't mean for his career, but he's going to be a help, and to get him back out there is huge. If he's back out there.
As for the Raiders, they also held a walkthrough on Wednesday. Max Crosby with a knee injury and Mr. Malcolm Kuntz, there it was, as a rib injury were both limited on Wednesday. Josh Jacobs with his quad and Michael Mayer with a toe did not practice. So we'll have to keep an eye on those players as the week goes on. 1 o'clock kickoff, broadcast in Central Indiana on CBS 4. Colts are a 3-point favorite, according to Vegas, over the Raiders.
Has the line moved?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's more of a favorite than the Falcons were, 2.5-point favorites, and then they won by 19 for crying out loud. But yeah, 3-point favorite over the Raiders. The total over/under is 44.5 points, so they're expecting a 24-21 ball game, something around that range. Chap, why don't you go first? Then Matt will go second, and I'll wrap things up with predictions for today.
I've got 17-13 Colts. I think I have very little faith in the Raiders' offense. I think what we saw is what we saw. And again, if they let Aiden O'Connell come in here and hurt them, then shame on them. Now, again, they've got players that can do it. Adams and the running backs can do it. But I think this defense has come out and play. They're going to play quicker. Gus Bradley told us they were a little bit hesitant, a little slow with. I think they made the package too big and players were thinking too much. I think they get their act back together and setting up that winning in with the Texans next week.
Matt.
Boy, it's tough because I just, especially the last 3 games have not been good for this team. But I do think Steichen's a good coach. I think he's going to be able to steady these guys, get them focused. And they should have been focused last week, but they really got to get down to it now. So I'm going to take the Colts at home, 24-13.
Ooh, a
Yeah,
walk-away game.
Walk-away, yeah, 11-point victory. All right, yeah, I'm leaning toward the Colts as well. I think that that's the pick. As for the
Are you
final
picking
score,
for the Colts or against the Raiders?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm feeling. But I am picking for the Colts. I think the Raiders have won a couple in a row. I mean, last week just like this is one of like the weird things. Like the Falcons lost 2 in a row. They're going in the wrong direction, and then they turn around, they beat the Colts, and that's what Vegas saw. Like this week, the Raiders are going in the right direction. They've won 2 in a row, including a dramatic one. Maybe they're feeling too comfortable with themselves after beating the Chiefs and not thinking they can come in and walk over the Colts, but maybe just a little bit too confident in their abilities. So I'm going to take the Colts as well. I'm going to go 27 to,
Ooh.
yeah, I know, right? 27 to 21. So it's going to be 27-21. That's it. So we all have the Colts. And that would be fantastic for us to close out the season with a game that truly matters. And all these games have mattered, of course, for them. But
the win and in prospect, and C.J. Stroud should be back this week, and certainly
you certainly expect him. You would expect him 2 weeks ago for crying out loud with a concussion, but he just has still just stayed on the bench there. So that'd be fun. And that could be just like the first of many incredibly meaningful games that C.J. Stroud plays here. So just could be the start of something long term, but not getting ahead of ourselves.
First things
Can't
first.
get ahead of ourselves.
So you got to take care of the Raiders first, and then you can hope for that, play-in game more or less.
1 p.m. Sunday afternoon, CBS 4. If you're in the Indianapolis area,
I believe Matt Ryan's on the.
I believe he is on the call. How about that? Blue Zone pregame show, 11:30 Sunday morning as well. If you're in Central Indiana, on CBS 4. We appreciate you listening. Download, subscribe, get us delivered to your podcast listening device every week as soon as we drop. And we'll see you next week for the final week of the regular season in the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.